right where we wanted.
Good morning. It is January 1st, New Year's Day, and we're going to start off 2025 with some mushroom logs. I'm going to set up some mushroom logs today, and I'm under my deck here, so we're going to stay out of the snow. But let me show you what we're working with. So these here are the logs. They're pretty decent size. These are maple. So I had asked Eric to cut these logs when we were out on our property. We had to cut them down anyways to clear away some area to fell a cedar. Okay. So this, I'm pretty sure it's maple. I mean, you can tell by the bark. It looks like maple. Since we had to cut it down anyways, I asked Eric to make 2 sections so I can inoculate it, probably with oyster spores. Oysters tend to like maple. Oysters like a lot of things. They're easy to grow, so we're gonna take those home with us. And this is a pretty good looking maple. So I asked him to set them aside, and we can use it for mushroom logs because we're going oyster mushrooms and shiitake, and they both don't mind maple. So we're gonna make use of what otherwise just would have been sitting in the woods. So when you're choosing your log, you want to make sure that it is the correct kind of tree, because certain mushrooms only like to grow on certain kinds of trees. Most things prefer hardwoods. There are very few mushrooms that are cultivated that prefer conifers like hemlock. We are growing shiitake and oyster, so we chose maple because it's abundant in our land. We cut it down anyways when we were out there, so we figured we would use it, and shiitake and oyster really don't mind maple at all. Most things don't mind maple. In terms of the size, you can use really any size log. Like you could use saplings, but the smaller it is, the faster it will colonize, but it will not produce as long. So there's a balance there. We went with logs that were about 6 inches in diameter and about 3 to 4 feet in length. And the reason we chose that is because they're large, so they'll continue to produce for quite some time. But also they have more surface area, so you can fit more spore plugs on them. So it's up to you what you choose to do, but this is just what we think might work for us. So I also wanted to mention the time of year when you should be harvesting mushroom logs, and that is when the trees are fully dormant. That's the best time of year to harvest. If the trees have already budded out, you don't want to be harvesting them. That's too late. So the best time is when the leaves are fully changed until spring, really until like sugaring season. So right now in the middle of winter, January is the best time to be cutting mushroom logs. We cut ours down maybe about a week and a half ago, and you want to inoculate them as soon as possible after you cut them down, because that's when the moisture content is going to be the highest in the logs. So we waited maybe like a week and a half, totally fine. If you can't get to them for a week or 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, what you can do is you can just pile them up on the ground and bury them in snow, and that should preserve them pretty well until you're able to get to them. I wasn't even recording.
The whole time?
The whole time.
Oh my, okay. Well,
so this log is about 7 feet, right?
yep, this one's just over 7 feet. It's the skinniest one. It's a little over 7 feet. We have two more, they get a little thicker, but both of them are still just over 6 foot. One's like 6 foot, the other's about 6.5 foot. So all of our logs are going to be 3 to 3.5 foot long. I just marked this one out, so I'm going to get them cut. The other ones I have an end to clean up a little bit on this one. So like this one's got a little bit of a jagged, compromised the bark in the exterior. So I'm going to cut that clean. So yeah, so we're going to clean up a couple of ends that need it. We're going to cut them in half. We'll get them down to manageable size. They'll all be 3 to 4 foot. They'll be ready to go. We'll get them cut.
So Eric's going to cut them in half for me. And the reason why 3 to 4 feet per log is ideal is because A, you want to be able to move it. If it's this length here, it becomes a little more cumbersome. If it's about half that length, it's a little easier to deal with. You can move it around as you need to according to the season. And also it gives the mushrooms, or I'm sorry, the mycelium a lot of material to colonize. So with a log this size, this will probably produce for several years. Whereas if you use something smaller than this, smaller in diameter, like if you use a really young sapling, it would colonize it, but it would only produce for maybe like 1 season. Also, you want to make sure you clean up stuff like this. So if the bark is damaged anywhere, you want to get rid of that, because this will leave room for other pathogens to make its way into the wood. It also will allow moisture to escape. So you want to make sure that the logs are undamaged, because you want to make sure that other pathogens aren't going to come in and colonize the wood instead. And you also want to make sure it's the most effective at retaining moisture. And logs with unbroken, intact bark like this are the best at retaining moisture, which is critical for mycelium colonization.
All right, I'm going to use my handy dandy back cut saw. It has been disinfected.
One eternity later.
I feel it's starting to go.
Yeah. Let it down a little bit.
Yeah. Whew. And just as a note, Eric disinfected that saw with bleach before he started cutting with it, because you want to make sure that no other pathogens get into the fresh wood.
So now we have our logs cut down to size. It's a 3 foot, this one happens to be exactly 3 foot log. And for this size, the recommended spacing on this is 4 inches between each plug this way, so row, 4 inches between each one, and then 2 inches between the row, but like in a diamond pattern. So we'll do we'll run a line here every 4 inches, and then we'll come offset 2 and do every other 4 inches. We're using a 5/16. This is what was recommended. This is a 5/16. This is a speed bore bit. Unlike your conventional drill bit, this one's specifically designed to just remount a hole. So this is perfect for plugs. And 1 inch depth using a depth stopper. So we get the consistent hole every time.
Because that's the length of each plug.
Right. So again, this is what was recommended based on the plugs that came out, the size of the plug. 5/16 bit, 1 inch depth. So that should suit us fine. I'm gonna get this first line marked out, and then we're gonna start drilling holes. Paint pen's a little cold. It's not transferring my mark, so we're just gonna run with it. 4.
Want me to get a Sharpie?
8. I got one in my pocket, but it's not gonna transfer well either.
Alright.
It's gonna be hard to see. That smells nice.
Oh, we're doing the sniff test. I think it passed the sniff test. Oh, I think Aria realized she needs to do the sniff test too. You gonna sniff it? Yep. Gotta do the inspection. Gotta inspect it.
My good cuts? Is the bark intact? Are they acceptable?
Aria.
What's the neighbor doing? Come on, let's go potty.
Aria, did it pass the sniff test? I think that's a yes. So this is what the finished log looks like. You can see these are 4 inches apart. Then the rows are 2 inches apart and they're staggered. So they're in a diamond shape. See, you can see one here, one here, one here, one here. So they're all in a diamond shape going up the log. The next step is to seal all of the plugs in the holes with wax, and you want to make sure you're using food grade paraffin wax, and 1 pound of this is enough to seal 10 logs depending on the size of a log. Some people like to seal the ends of the logs as well, but we're going to melt this in a double boiler type deal. So this is a silicone bowl that I got at Martin's for like $3. And then this is just an old pot that we got at the thrift store for, I don't know, probably also $3. One thing to note is you do not want to be melting wax in a pot that you want to use later. Once it has the paraffin in it, it's always going to have paraffin on it. So you want to use something that's kind of old and gross and dedicated to this exact thing. So I'm going to heat this up and then set this inside. So it's kind of like a double boiler. Okay, the paraffin is all melted, so we're going to go ahead and plug and seal the logs. That's what I was looking for. Losing this. And these are the completed logs. We're just storing them low to the ground right now, just so they're not subject to a lot of wind and they maintain their moisture content. And we just put some random scraps of logs underneath to keep them directly off the floor to avoid contamination from other pathogens. And I just marked them all. Marked them all with the name, so we know exactly which ones are which. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll keep you updated on the progress of the mushroom logs. We're going to put them out into the woods in the spring, so we'll show you the configuration and the spot that we choose, and then hopefully if they produce in the fall, we'll keep you updated on that too. See you next time.